Next guy we're talking about here is Brandon AIYUK, who's coming off his best game of the season, maybe starting to get back to being the Brandon AIYUK that we saw as a rookie in 2020. He's got 15 targets in his last 2 games, and last week in the loss against the Cardinals, 6 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown. But again, we're still looking at the body of work here. We're talking about a crowded receiving corps that has still a very good Deebo Samuel and George Kittle back last week as well with the calf injury, against a tough Rams defense, which has been really difficult for a lot of opposing wide receivers to have success against, and now they're going to get Von Miller presumably on the field as well. So Adam, if you have Brandon AIYUK, must start in 3 receiver leagues, but what about 2 receiver leagues? Would you trust him in those formats?
No. I'm not sure he's a must start in 3 receiver leagues just because he's a guy you picked up off waivers, so I think a lot of good teams might have better options. I'm actually starting to get a little bit more encouraged about AIYUK this week just because I think they're going to lose. I think they're going to be trailing, and that could mean 40 pass attempts for Jimmy Garoppolo. They've lost 5 games, and Garoppolo's been the quarterback for 4 of them. And in 3 of those 4 games, he's thrown 40 or 41 passes. The only time he didn't was when he was dealing with the bomb cyclone, and that was against Indianapolis. And it was a pretty close game anyway until that late pick 6, so they didn't really have the opportunity to throw the ball, just bad conditions. So my point is you're going to get a lot of opportunities for all 3 of their main pass catchers. And yeah, I do think I would stop short of calling him a must start. But I do think he's a probably start in 3 receiver leagues. But certainly, if you're considering him a must start, I think you're probably getting a little bit too hyped on Brandon AIYUK, who's really had one good game this year.
Absolutely. But the reports that we heard from Kyle Shanahan and everything in San Francisco, the practice habits have been better. He's out of the doghouse for whatever that's worth. So maybe the last 2 weeks are a sign of things to come, and that would certainly be nice for Brandon AIYUK. So you say he's not a must-start receiver in 3 receiver leagues. Adam, what about Devontae Smith coming off a great game last week against the Chargers? First touchdown since week 2. Can he continue to find the end zone and be productive for fantasy managers?
And the funny thing is, everybody we talk about, it's how do you sit them when you have to start 3 receivers at a flex in a PPR league, right? I can't get away from Deontay Smith, but I did get away from Deontay Smith last week, and I benched him, and I lost almost 20 points on that decision, and I lost the matchup because of it, and I'm really mad at myself. But Devontae Smith, if you look at his season, it has been extremely up and down. And one good game does not mean another good game is coming. And now you are talking about a team that is trying to be the most run-heavy team in football. And I don't think you're going to get 15 pass attempts, but I think you might get 23, 25 pass attempts from Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, missed Dallas Goedert on what would have been maybe a 45-yard play, who missed Devontae Smith in the end zone last week, even though people are praising Jalen Hurts. There are still a lot of things working against Devontae Smith. It's not like he's facing a bad defense. It's a very respectable Denver defense. So I will be starting him, but I think a guy like Cole Beasley is much safer. If you want upside, you go with Smith, but I think Beasley's going to definitely have more catches than Devontae Smith will, and there's a huge downside with Smith. So hard to get away from him, but don't get in the mindset of, well, he was good last week, so I have to start him. That's a bad idea in fantasy for most players. A guy like Devontae Smith, for example.
I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment, and I do agree that the Denver Broncos are a respectable defense. They're also a beat-up defense right now. Their pass rush is down to Jonathan Cooper as their best guy. They're missing 2 of their starting cornerbacks. I'm not sure if they're really as good as the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to sound silly. As the Cowboys made them look last week, Dak was off target on downfield throws. Not that Jalen Hurts is Mr. on target with his throws, but his completion rate over the last couple of weeks has improved. They're starting to define throws to him. And now that the run game has been going for Philadelphia, I could see the Eagles taking their foot off the gas with the run and starting to become a more balanced team. I'm interested in Devontae Smith this week. I think he can be a number 2 fantasy wide receiver. He leads the Eagles in targets. He's tied for 5th with most receptions of 16-plus yards this season. He's a big play guy. He's not as good as Tyler Lockett in that regard. You'll start a guy like Tyler Lockett ahead of him easily, but he's somebody who could end up being a decent receiver that you'll start as a number 3, has potential to finish as a wide receiver 2.
I hope so, but this is what the Broncos have done in their last 3 games against opposing wide receivers. Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. That group combined for 26 PPR points. The receivers that scored against the Broncos over that stretch, DeAndre Carter and Malik Turner. So they've done a good job against the bigger name guys, the number 1 type caliber receivers. Devontae Smith clearly in that category. So we'll see if he's able to overcome what the Cowboys guys have done and what McLaurin did. And for what it's worth, the Browns guys did as well against what is still a very good secondary. So I think Devontae Smith more of a number 3 fantasy wide receiver for this week.